Agenda item 2, declaration of interest and party whip. Are there any declaration of interest or party whip? No, I feel like I should get this bit on record now so I don't have to say it every single meeting, but I once again declare that I work for National Highways, and as part of the work programme we have an item on there for National Highways, so at that point I will leave the meeting and not participate in it. We will be looking to move that agenda item up to agenda item 5 due to other considerations we have today. And the only other thing is, in the Environment Act 2021, National Highways is mentioned as a passing in there on the tree consultation, and therefore I'll continue to participate in that agenda item. Thank you. Agenda item 3, public participation.
No, Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item 4, minutes. Did I hear correctly, Louis? You now want to say something on the minutes, please?
I haven't got a problem so much with the minutes, but it does refer to a question which I raised at the last meeting in October, which was a question about the resurfacing of footways and about whether there was a standard for the smoothness or the flatness of the pedways and cycleways. As far as I know, I've not received an answer back yet from the officers.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember that question, because we don't want them to be flat, do we? We want them to go into a gully. Let me chase them, because there's a few questions that I don't believe have been answered since the last scrutiny committee. I was meant to chase that prior to this meeting, so I'll do that as well. Thank you. Are we happy for them to sign? Yeah. And on that note, I'll pass over to Councillor Jones. Give me 1 second.
Okay, yes. As Councillor Josh just explained, it's declared an interest, and I'll be taking this agenda item forward. It's now agenda item 5, which was agenda item 8. And on page 79 of the agenda, all members would have seen this in the agenda pack. I'd like to invite comments on what areas you'd like next, or anything you feel should be prioritised for future scrutiny, please. Councillor Lewick.
We're talking about the forward plan, aren't we, and about the things that we'll be looking at for the future. Yeah. The local transport plan, LTP5, is something which has been put off back and back for a few years now, for all sorts of reasons I don't fully understand. I'm wondering whether that could be something that we now push forward, because it's been, I think, slightly overdue now.
Thank you.
We'll have a word with the officers and just see when it can be brought forward. Oh, sorry, Cabinet Member.
Thank you. So we've actually already kicked off the commission of LTP5. That was done back in September. Thank you.
Would any other members like to suggest anything? Okay, I think that's it. Thank you. And the next next bit is we'll invite Councillor Josh Robinson back in.
Thank you, everybody. And if we go on to the next agenda item, which is the Environment Act, and I'll pass over to Emily. Please, thank you.
Thank you, panel. Thank you for inviting us here today to talk through actions and progress with the matters arising from the Environment Act. So we've set out matters in the report which is before you, and these are the natural and environment matters from the Act. We're not talking about waste, which is the matter which is excluded. So we're talking about local nature recovery strategy, biodiversity net gain, air quality action plans, and the requirement to consult on tree felling. The substantive items in the report are local nature recovery strategy and also biodiversity net gain. Local nature recovery strategy is probably the largest item. So I'm just going to hand over to Cody Levine, who's our head of environmental policy, who's just going to give you a brief introduction to the local nature recovery strategy before we move to any questions that you'll have on the report. Thank you.
Thank you, members. By way of brief summary, the local nature recovery strategies are a statutory requirement of the Environment Act. The government intends to create 48 local nature recovery strategy areas so that there are no overlaps or gaps, and create a national nature recovery network through the combination of those. And the NRN, the National Nature Recovery Network, is the focus of the government's delivery for environmental improvement plan targets and commitments. In 2023, government published the LNRS regulations, and DEFRA published statutory LNRS guidance. Together, those create the legal framework setting out what LNRS is intended to do, its legal scope for development and consultation and adoption. They're meant to be collaboratively prepared. They don't create any new legislative protections for sites or for species. They don't pose any impediments to land management or to development. They're intended to focus funding, such as grants, agri-environment schemes, and biodiversity net gain uplifts and offset payments to where they'll have the best effect. The proposed measures or activities inside the LNRS for nature's recovery can be undertaken voluntarily by anyone, so it's not the responsibility of the LNRS responsible authorities. LNRS doesn't require or compel action by landowners or managers. They don't have funding directly associated to deliver those measures. But all LNRS responsible authorities have been given funding for strategy preparation, and we understand that there will be continuing funding through LNRS delivery phase, so that responsible authorities can continue in the role of coordinating and facilitating LNRS delivery. We know that once published, LNRS cannot be amended, but we anticipate the Secretary of State for the Environment and Rural Affairs will instruct LNRS responsible authorities to review and republish the strategies about every 3 to 10 years, most likely with the same cycle of local development plan review and republication. In June 2023, Worcestershire County Council was appointed by the Secretary of State to prepare and publish a local nature recovery strategy for Worcestershire. In November 2023, Cabinet resolved a scheme of delegated authority, which gave us a process for developing and consulting on a draft and a final LNRS. During 23 and 24, a project steering group and a series of expert task and finish groups were formed. An evidence base was published in support of LNRS preparation, including Worcestershire's State of Nature report, which outlines the distinctive natural environment for Worcestershire, together with the key threats and pressures which impact on those assets. We also developed a set of proposed priorities and objectives for nature's recovery, and a draft local habitat map, the interactive part, which is very much the sort of shop face or interactive part of the strategy for most of its audience. We undertook an issues and options consultation in 2024, and through that collaborative process of development with the public and our supporting authorities, who have additional legal status, and in Worcestershire those comprise of each of the district authorities in Natural England, we prepared a draft LNRS over 2024 and 2025. As your notes will point out, the draft LNRS sets out 6 overarching biodiversity themes relevant for Worcestershire, things like rivers and streams and lowland meadows, 24 individual habitat or strategic priorities, such as green spaces in the built environment, local wildlife sites, 16 individual species priorities, such as water voles, adder, turtle doves, and 10 species assemblage priorities, things like house martins and swifts. And the draft LNRS then targets recommended actions through 44 mapped potential measures. Those are actions which can best be affected in a particular location, and 31 non-mapped actions, things that can happen with equal effect anywhere in the county. And following DEFRA's guidance, we've also identified 9 what are called wider environmental benefits, the broader benefits that can be delivered if we undertake those potential measures. And for Worcestershire, those are things like carbon sequestration and flood amelioration, flood water reduction. Public consultation on the draft LNRS was just been completed. In October, we received around 600 or so detailed and fairly technical consultation responses. The consultation attracted just short of 100,000 views on associated social media and about 2,500 click-throughs from social media into the consultation document itself. And they've given us advice on potential measure wording and on the location of those potential measures. We are currently drafting a consultation report, which will be published on our website very shortly, and a final LNRS is currently in production. The LNRS regulations require us to undertake one more, what's called a pre-publication consultation with our supporting authorities, and we're aiming to start that 28-day consultation period following the Cabinet Member for Environment's approval of the final LNRS, following our delegated scheme of authority, hopefully early in the new year, and then subsequently we'll ask for, I think, February Cabinet to review the final LNRS with a view for its adoption and publication, and we'll continue to work with Worcestershire's Local Nature Partnership to explore opportunities for LNRS in its delivery phase.
Thank you for that. Obviously, I would normally go to the Cabinet Member, but obviously he sent his apologies. But I don't know if, Carl, you wanted to add anything at all as a Cabinet. That wasn't expected. But yeah. Just a quick question before I open up to, is there a reason why we're not looking at the food waste bit in here?
What we've always done with the Environment Act previously with this panel is we have divided it between anything that comes under waste and anything that comes under the natural environment. It is because it is such a big piece of legislation that it was felt that it was probably easier for the panel to deal with if we made those distinctions.
Okay, so we wouldn't see the waste one till next year after implementation.
I guess it's for yourselves to decide when you want waste to come forward.
Well, if possible, we can have that for the next meeting, if possible, please, so we can look into that. It's obviously a really big ticket item. So.
Noted.
And then, Louis?
This looks fantastic. It looks a really good body of work. Obviously, we've got a significant amount of money from central government to finance this. And you alluded in your presentation that you are seeking additional money for the implementation phase for this. Obviously, we all know that budgets are tight, both from the county council but also national government as well. Can you just expand a little bit more on where the money is going to be coming from and the sort of timescales we're looking at? Because obviously a strategy without any money to back it up in the implementation phase could be that we're wasting money if we don't actually do anything with the report.
Thank you, Councillor. The funding has been committed by DEFRA via Natural England. It comes through a Section 31 grant. We've had receipt of a transition grant which covers this financial year and a commitment from DEFRA for a delivery phase grant of a similar amount. The exact value has not been confirmed, and neither have DEFRA announced the date that we should anticipate to receive that funding, I'm afraid. We're just expecting that it will be similar to the sums that we've received each year so far.
You want to? No. Tony?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. A question regarding paragraph 17, which is also mentioned in paragraph 15, a nature-friendly farming conference. I just want to ask, realistically, what can be asked of farmers in this process that would not push up the cost of food production? When we're talking about, obviously, helping land managers achieve nature recovery alongside sustainable food production and regenerative farming practices.
Inside the strategy, there is quite a large amount of guidance that's been produced in collaboration with farmers, with farming agents and with the National Farmers Union. There are examples, including some video interviews with farmers from Worcestershire, which have showed that nature's recovery can happen not just without further addition to costs and production value, but sometimes it can help increase productivity. And sometimes the measures that are required in order to help nature can have no effect at all on farming. So, for instance, around the timing of hedgerow cutting, around the management of infield ponds, and holding water back on less productive land instead of spraying with pesticides, insecticides, and so on and so forth. And there are some examples of that on our LNRS website in the video interview sections.
Thank you.
Emma?
Chairman, just to confirm, are we only looking at the LNRS at the moment as opposed to the rest of the Act?
No, the whole Environment Act that's in the report.
Okay, thank you. So, first of all, I don't think I'm as generous as you are, Chairman. I actually find the fact that the Cabinet Member for Environment is not here, I'm actually finding, unless, you know, there's been a medical emergency that I don't know about, which obviously I would then feel sympathy for, I find that it's actually difficult for us to have this meeting without the Cabinet Member here, because everything is about everything for the Cabinet Member, and so all the questions that we'll be asking will be directed to the Cabinet Member. So I find the meeting really futile without him actually here to attend. So unless I'm speaking out of order that he's had a medical emergency or something, I just don't know how we can actually go on when the whole of this meeting is based around everything that he will need to answer. Now, I appreciate obviously that we've got officers here to answer technical questions for us, but really the whole point of overview and scrutiny is to actually ask those questions of the Cabinet Member. So, you know, I just don't know where we sit, because there's key questions that we want to ask, and certainly key questions that I want to ask, that are all directed at the Cabinet Member. I can't understand how the Cabinet Member with responsibility for environment isn't at the Environment Overview and Scrutiny panel, particularly where we're presenting the Environment Act. I don't know if anybody wants to, I can't really ask you to say anything.
I'll come to Carl in one second, but yeah, obviously we can ask questions in terms of in writing to the Cabinet Member. It would be great if the Cabinet Member was here, but on that note, I would like to thank Carl for being here, who's been at every single meeting and had some very tricky questions, let's just say the least, but I'll pass over to Carl if you want to.
Thank you, Chair. I take your point, and it's unfortunate. However, there was a clash in the diaries, and he is attending a key flood meeting, which is to discuss funding for flooding across the county. So it's unfortunate this couldn't be rearranged.
Just on that note, out of courtesy to this meeting, I only found that information that was the reason it was not attending this morning. I only found out the apologies was on Friday night at 5 o'clock, I think it was, or 5 o'clock. So I didn't pick it up till Sunday when I looked back on my emails. I think for courtesy, and I say I credit to yourself who always attends these meetings, but we've had now 3 environment scrutiny committees, and this has been the second time that the Environment Cabinet Member has not been there, but let's not dwell on it today. And let's get some questions that we need to have. No, thanks, Emma.
Thank you. And I think courtesy is the key thing there. And certainly if there'd been all sorts of arrangements to try and move this meeting, then I could understand that we hadn't been able to accommodate it. And I do very much thank you, Councillor Perks, for actually being here at every meeting. But to that end, I won't direct these questions at you, because I'm sure that you don't want to answer questions on biodiversity net gain. So thank you for being here, but I will put the questions to the invisible Cabinet Member. So my questions are on biodiversity net gain. So we are in a very rural county. So we've got everything here. The report sort of reads as if it's a new thing, but obviously BNG is not remotely new. At district level, local planning authorities have been allocating with legal agreements biodiversity net gain in planning applications probably for the last 2 years. What concerns me is that we're saying, for example, great that we've got a BNG officer, but things like, for example, at point 38, the property team is at an early stage of consideration to actually explore potential for the council's land holdings. So there's 2 points really for me to make. First of all, because we are a rural county in a lot of places, I want to make sure that certainly, yes, appreciating that some of this sits with the LPAs, but I want to ensure that we make sure that there is as much on-site BNG as possible, because we should not ever be allowing, in a countryside setting, BNG to be moved off-site to allow for further urban areas, because it is completely contradictory. Where that's happened, I've actually seen off-site BNG, which you'd have to be an expert on the technical details of it to actually understand whether it's meeting the legal requirements or not. So I think that's the first criteria, and something that we must ensure is that where it's possible, so in any sort of rural countryside setting, BNG must be on site. When we then go to off-site BNG, I would like to see substantially more, and if the Cabinet member was here, I would ask him these questions, to know what we're doing to ensure that we actually import BNG from neighbouring counties and wherever it may be, because obviously that would be the perfect thing for us to do, to retain our rural identity, to actually import BNG from more urban settings where they obviously have to off-site it. But the other thing is that at point 38, this is contradictory to what the council, as far as I can see, are planning to do. And I would like the Cabinet member, in his absence, to answer and give a very explicit and comprehensive response to know why we are actually looking to sell off pieces of land that would be perfect to actually import BNG to. What that does is obviously it has twofold benefit, because importing BNG, like anything that you're importing, we're going to then gain from that. But what it also does is keep our countryside as a countryside, and within our county we keep as much biodiversity net gain or biodiversity as we possibly can. So really the question is, what are we doing to ensure that as much on-site BNG is there? But most importantly for the Cabinet member, what are we doing to encourage people to import BNG? And this shouldn't be at an early stage of consideration, because this has been in place for the last 2 years at least. And why are we going completely contrary to that and looking to sell pieces of land that would be perfect pieces of land to import BNG?
Thank you. Just before I come over thingy, I've just been corrected, just so that we're all aware. Councillor Cresswell gave his apologies on Tuesday to this meeting. I didn't pick it up till Friday, but Tuesday. Sorry to pass that over.
Thank you. So in terms of sort of setting a bit of context around biodiversity net gain, County has written this as the Minerals and Waste Planning Authority. We're not a local planning authority. We deal with minerals and waste and with our own applications under Regulation 3. And of these, we would always prioritise biodiversity net gain on site. Now, in terms of the minerals industry, generally, it is something that they can do on sites. They generally have quite large sites, and they can implement biodiversity net gain on their sites. In terms of waste, that is different. Some waste sites are very constrained. They might be able to deliver it on site, but also under the terms of the biodiversity net gain regulations, there could be situations in which they have to deliver that off site because they've got such constrained sites. In terms of our work on looking at our land holding, that is in the early stages, and it is set within that wider context of our small holdings estate. But until we've undertaken that review, there's really nothing else that we officers can add to that comment. But I am just going to hand over to Cody in case there's anything further on the technical side of biodiversity net gain that he wants to add.
Thank you. I can add a little bit in terms of policy context because I recognise the concerns enshrined in that question, and I fully support them and I do understand them. The mitigation hierarchy, as enshrined in the National Planning Policy Framework and the MPPG, the guidance behind that, also supports the delivery of biodiversity net gain on sites initially and only moves towards compensation and offsetting where it's unavoidable, and there are requirements for planning authorities to ask developers to demonstrate that that process has been followed through the consenting system. I think in Worcestershire we're in a relatively unique position insofar as most of our local development plan policies also have a green infrastructure, quantitative green infrastructure requirement. The Green Infrastructure Strategy published by the county and the Green Infrastructure Partnership recognises that good green infrastructure can be a mechanism through which biodiversity net gain can be delivered on site. So it's not an additional requirement, it's a mechanism through which BNG can be focused for on-site delivery. I think in Worcestershire that puts us a little bit further down that trajectory of making sure that we're encouraging on-site BNG delivery wherever possible. As part of our early research through LNRS, we have done some consultation work with the private sector biodiversity net gain offset banks. So I know that there are private sector BNG habitat banks inside Worcestershire. They are registered on the National Register and they are already attracting BNG sales from elsewhere around the country, some units from London, some units from Northern England. So in terms of attracting BNG into the county, that private sector function is very much doing what the legislative system is there to afford, and that's really my final point, which is while we can, through strategic planning and guidance, encourage as much as possible for on-site, that mechanism to facilitate offsetting is enshrined in law, and so that's always an option for developers to exploit that as and when appropriate.
Do you want to come back? Just before you do, I didn't think I needed to remind people, but can please we ensure that our phones are on silent, if possible, please, to stop distracting from questions. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Yes, just to thank you both for your responses, and I think that really reiterates my question to the Cabinet member, because we are in a not necessarily unique position, but we're in a privileged position in the county that we represent, and therefore we need to keep as much of that countryside as we possibly can and keep as much of that biodiversity, which is why obviously we need to be looking at importing as much as we can. But to do that, we need to make sure that we need to keep as much land possible to import that to, which is obviously comes back to Cabinet decisions about looking to sell land. That's where we would want to import it. So thank you for your answers, and that very much reiterates my question to the Cabinet member. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm going to go on to something completely different, which I think is maybe something Councillor Perks' area. Under the Air Quality Action Plan, there's much mention of the LCWIP, local cycling and walking infrastructure plans, and there's also mention of school travel plans. I mean, LCWIP is something I've been quite involved with the local active travel group, and I mean, we're well aware that these plans are the plans for sort of Malvern and Perthshire and Worcester have been recently been out for consultation on, and we're well aware that these plans don't themselves come with funding. I mean, my question on this is what plans do we have in terms of getting funding to support these, the LC WIP? Also, just sort of see as mention of school travel plans at the bottom of paragraph 45. Again, question is about what policy is in terms of encouraging things like bike bus, for example, for travel to school. Do we have policy being developed on this area? Thank you.
Thank you. So in terms of local cycling walking infrastructure plans, as you've rightly said, they don't come with funding to deliver. However, they put us in a better place to apply for the funding that's necessary to deliver the network of routes that are set out within them. And this is principally through two different funding areas, but not exclusively. So the first one is to Active Travel England. Active Travel England have, in this context, two key functions. They are both a distributor of grant aid, and they are also an approvals body. So in their approvals body role, they look at our performance around local cycling and walking infrastructure and determine whether we are have the plans to deliver and are starting to deliver routes. If they make the judgment that we are, and they rate local highways authorities from 0, which is the lowest rating, to 4, which is the highest rating, according to our performance on both planning and delivery. If we were rated as 0, we would not be able to access funding to deliver. But having the local cycling and walking infrastructure plans in place allows us to access funding. So that's one place where we can access funding. The other main area for funding is from developer contributions, primarily Section 106 funding. And again, having the local cycling walking infrastructure plans in place allows us to demonstrate to developers how we wish their developments to link in with this network and provide the connectivity to schools, to retail, to train stations, whatever is appropriate in those circumstances, so that we can secure funding to help us deliver off-site. And also it strengthens our case to ask developers to deliver on-site within their development. In terms of policy, Carl, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Emily. So with regards to policy and bike buses and the like, I've got no intention of bringing in a policy that supports that per se. And the reason for that is we've got school streets, which is within the known, or it's within the known works and criteria that we as a council offer. The reason that I hesitate is I believe it's not overly known amongst our number, as in elected members. So I have, and this is down to the guys at Bike Worcester, had a really good meeting with them. And with them, there have been 10 schools that have been identified across the county that could be acceptable for that scheme. As you may well know, the onus of that is with the school, the local resident and the local member. So information has been sent to those local members, one of which is in the room with us. And I'm happy to support that and do what I can to support there. But as far as bike bus is concerned, that's not a policy I'm looking to introduce.
Yeah, I'll just start off thanking Carl for that. I mean, I am very well aware of school streets. I didn't mention it because I didn't want to steal my colleague's thunder just here, but it's, yeah, I mean, thank you for the policy moving in the right direction on that, I would say. Question on, there was a mention of the rating. I mean, I'm aware that Worcestershire, we had a 0 active travel weight rating. Where are we with that? What is the what progress are we making? I mean, I have to say I have specifically mentioned this on things myself. One of my aims becoming a councillor was to hopefully get rid of our 0 active travel rating. In case you haven't noticed, this is something I'm really quite keen on. So.
In Active Travel England are now on their 3rd ratings assessment. So on the first one, you're right, we were rated as 0. 2 years later, they reassessed us and they rated us as 1. And we're currently awaiting announcements on the 3rd iteration. So we've submitted the information to them, but they haven't published anything in response yet.
Just to help everyone else out, I was made aware late last night of that email that you sent about school streets. Is it possible to provide this committee, or just everyone, those 10 schools you've identified and all the data behind it, please?
Yeah, I'm happy to share that.
Yeah. Just before I come to Louis, just on the cycling bit, it obviously says that we now reviewed prior to finalise that Bromsgrove local cycling and walking infrastructure plan is in preparation for public consultation in 2026. Has that been talked with local members about that going forward, or is it not in collaboration with them at the moment?
So on the Bromsgrove one, and as with any other, we've been in discussion with the District Council officer side, and then immediately before the consultation, we would share that with county members to get their views, and then either during the consultation or just before, we would talk to district councillors as well.
Okay, because I think what's the best way you get these things through and the best outcome is if we have consultation as early as possible with people. Now in Bromsgrove, I think we spent £3.4 million on improvements to walking and cycling previously, and I don't believe we've actually seen a massive uptick in cycling or walking across Bromsgrove because of that, and I think that's mainly because it wasn't in consultation with local members and local residents before it became what it was. Once you publish something, it's really hard for it to be changed. So I'd really encourage that, you know, I'm talking about specifically about the Bromsgrove one because that's the next one coming up for consultation, that you, as early as possible, talk to local members to get their feedback from on the ground about what's going on, please.
Perhaps if I just set out the nature of the consultations and explain ones that we've done previously, that might help with your points. So this is a consultation on the draft of the routes, draft of the networks, and it's a very open consultation. For example, in Wyre Forest, where we followed exactly this procedure with the Wyre Forest Local Cycling Infrastructure Plan, we had a range of comments, some of which have resulted in some significant changes to the routes. So by engaging through this process with members at both county and district level, we are absolutely listening to what everybody's got to say, and we do make amends to them. So we would, you know, applying the same principles that we would apply when we come to consult on the Bromsgrove one in 2026. Everybody will have the opportunity to make comments, and changes will be made as appropriate.
Okay, I'll come to Louis in 1 second. So just to hammer home that point, I think the biggest problem I have is that you get to it just before consultation, you'll involve local members, and then potentially there's uproar because they don't think it's right, or they could say it's amazing and they have no comment. But to get to a better position, surely we involve people as early as possible to be able to do it. I've been through consultations within Bromsgrove, specifically on BREP, and I don't feel like residents were listened to on that consultation. So I'm finding it really difficult to have faith that things will change. I'm taking you the word that it will, but if you could just involve, if the document's there now, you could just provide that to Bromsgrove members so they could have a discussion on it. But I'll leave that with if you want. Liv.
Thank you. If you leave that with us, thank you.
Louis? Sorry, yeah.
I just want to come back in on that last point around Brett, because I do understand the frustrations and it's something that we've spoken to. What I would point out for any listening and those in the rooms is obviously that those consultations, whilst I take your point, were also happening at the point of COVID.
It happened prior to COVID. So, thank you. Louis?
A question about air quality management plans, building on the question just been asked by Councillor Sweeney. The District Council are obviously responsible for the measurement of air quality, but they don't have many levers to pull in terms of improving air quality, because I think district councils need the support from the county council, and I'd be interested to hear what officers and also cabinet members think about trying to put in some more concrete measures that actually support district councils to reduce the problem of air quality, particularly in sort of urban places like Worcester. So, for example, you could have, perhaps we should be having an aspiration to have all of our short journeys of 1 to 2 miles being done by active travel. If there was an aspiration for that, that was actually a policy or an aspiration, I think that would be really helpful and useful for other for other things coming in. The second thing I would really like to see is more support for school travel plans. Schools are obviously really, really busy and teachers are really busy, but I think there really is a place for helping communities with active travel plans and school travel plans. We all know about the disruption of traffic on school days, particularly on a rainy day, how much chaos there is out of most schools across the county. And if we can get more people walking and cycling, that would be definitely improving for local residents, but also improving air quality as well. And the third thing I would really like officers to look at is more support for things like having the ability to pass perhaps bylaws or whatever to encourage or enforce people switching off their engines outside schools. Something I've tried to do in my area, and I've been told, oh, it's too difficult to do, too difficult to enforce. But I'm really looking for some steering here about whether there's anything the county council can do to encourage that ability to be able to put signs up and proper enforcement, which I know obviously is the local district council. But seeing cars outside schools with their engines running while school children are walking past, and obviously all the residents who live there with all the traffic and all the fumes coming from it, I think is certainly something that needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I think there's multiple points in that question, so if I missed anything, if you wouldn't mind reminding me at the end. So the actions that we've set out and in the air quality action plans, and I've pulled across into this report, are the ones that working with regulatory services who work with the district and city council on this have highlighted as the ones that will have the most measurable effects. And the legislation is written in such a way that we have to focus on the 5 actions that are going to have the biggest impact. That does not mean that other actions are not important. However, we have to concentrate on the 5. So for the county council, it is about electric vehicle charging strategy, delivery of electric vehicle charging points to encourage that shift from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles. However, within the Air Quality Action Plan, active travel and school travel plans are still recognised. And there's a link across to the local cycling and walking infrastructure plans and the national aspiration to have 50% of short journeys by active means. But unfortunately, the quantifiable reduction is such that they don't sit within those top 5 that we need to focus on. But like I said, they're still of absolute importance and still something that we would be encouraging. So they are referenced and included within the air quality action plans. In terms of anti-idling zones, my understanding, but I'm going to ask if I can take this away, is that would fall to regulatory services through the City Council to monitor, but can I take that away to be sure?
Yeah, I'm going to just come in and really reiterate some of what Emily's spoken to there, but with regards to the short journeys, there isn't anything that I'm going to come out with that makes that policy with the short journeys 1 to 2 miles. But what I will caveat that with is a lot of what we're looking to do with LTP5 is make it so that we do have transport hubs across the network, so that in theory it doesn't matter if you're in a rural or an urban area, you're able to get from one end of the county to the other. When you arrive at your destination, be it a bus hub or a rail station, then there will be a means of transport, whether it's walking, cycling, additional onward travel and the like. The idling I think with what's already been spoken to with regards to the levy scheme and the way modern technology goes, there isn't anything there that I'm going to be coming out with specifically because it is being addressed through other measures.
Could I ask the cabinet member to perhaps put his weight and support for school travel plans? Is that something that you would encourage schools to do? And perhaps there could be some recognition every year for the best school travel plan, or some awards thing, or something that would actually promote the use of school travel plans. Because at the moment, there are very, very few schools who have actually got a school travel plan. It does seem to be a very basic thing to do, is to actually talk to the students in a school and encourage them to come by sustainable means. It seems a very easy thing to do, but I think having some leadership from the county level would be really, really helpful.
I think we need the infrastructure in place to allow that on a more widespread basis. But I'm happy to continue to push the school streets scheme, and through greater awareness as we progress through LTP5, make things more easily known across our elected members, so that things are more easily understood. And as I say, I'll share what has been done already. I'm happy to support, in principle, any activity that schools wish to engage in.
Thank you. And I think we just have some sort of positive news, because I think 2 air quality management areas that I know have recently gone in Bromsgrove. But obviously a lot of that's due to private sector innovation, isn't it? The cars are more, you know, a better fuel efficient, more electric cars, because obviously there's ones in Licky End in the A38 that has gone now, but I can't imagine we've done anything there other than cause chaos at the moment, that has made that go away. So what more is the county doing to try and ensure that the ones that are still remaining are going to come out of that in the future?
So the main focus for county is, because of this having to be measurable, is around opportunities for charging electric vehicles. So the main thing that the county can do is we've adopted our electric vehicle charging strategy, and that was focused on the delivery of charge points for people that don't have their own drives where they can park up and charge their cars. And the delivery of on-street charging will be funded by the local electric vehicle infrastructure fund, which we have now secured. And we are now in the final stages of procurement. Hope to sign up with a charge point operator either very late this year or very early into next year, and then we can commence the rollout of the chargers.
Okay, thank you. Linda?
Thank you, Chairman. I think neither our Cabinet Member nor Highways Officer would be surprised if I don't mention an ATC in my division, or proposed. And I'm reading this, and it's just a little bit about the detail, because, Emily, you've been kind enough to come back to me saying that the ATC plan at Norton is being looked at and potentially reviewed. My question is, we're talking here about consultation. Now, I've not heard anything from their residents about having been involved in a consultation. Now, when might that be happening? Because this is one, for the benefit of those who aren't local, directly opposite the Wychhaven Newtown proposal, by the station, and a route that currently isn't suitable, but was previously, many years ago by county, described as an active travel corridor. Rather embarrassing. We've got sort of bicycles painted on the road and people painted on the road where you wouldn't dare walk or cycle. So it's a question of when might that consultation go out to parish councils. They're particularly involved and very engaged on this. They've seen a succession of cabinet members, and we've all walked the route and hidden in the hedge as you go over the railway bridge. So I felt I couldn't miss the opportunity of asking. And, you know, we're saying that the plans in the county are well advanced. I think they'd quite like to actually see that plan. When might that be possible? because it would certainly make them take it off my action list, which has been on for 6 years and is now bright red, and it's embarrassing every time I go to see them every month. But I think, you know, we could allay a lot of fears, perhaps, if that started to come together. They know it's not going to happen tomorrow. It can't. It's a new development. But it's very much key to what we're saying with all these things in here. So thank you.
So this is the Woodbury Lane active travel corridor. So this was originally put in alongside the delivery of Worcestershire Parkway rail station. And at the time that it was put in, it met the standards. However, almost immediately after it was put in, Local Transport Note 1 of 20, which sets the guidance for the standards of active travel routes, came in, and it absolutely does not meet the standards of Local Transport Note 1 of 20. So subsequently, a review was undertaken, both with our consultants, Jacobs, and also internally to look at what our alternative options are. The consensus was that to meet Local Transport Note 1 of 20, it would be necessary to take it off the road and to put it into what is currently farmers' fields. So we would be in the purchase of land. And obviously that, if it had ever been delivered, would have come with a significant bill. And unfortunately, we never have had the money to do that. So recognising the importance of Wychavon Town, and it is a link into the proposed Wychavon Town, what we have done and commenced in the summer is to work with with a company called KMC, who are the consultants, the highways consultants for Wychavon Town. So doing a lot of work with Wychavon District Council, and we have commissioned them to have a look at both the previous work that's been done and linking it with Wychavon Town. What is the best way forward for this? That is still an ongoing piece of work. Once we have that piece of work back, we will absolutely be sharing it, but it is still ongoing at the moment.
Thank you, Emily. Would it be possible just to send me a summary of that so that they know a little more than me just saying a review is being done? There's a little more meat around the bones. I'm sure then they'll be more than content that it's on the everybody's agenda and be a little more patient. Thank you.
Of course.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Given that farmers in Worcestershire pretty much own the majority of the land and probably cause the most issues with water, are there clear financial and practical incentives for farmers to deliver water-related nature recovery actions such as buffer strips and wetland creation? Also, are we giving farmers enough support to help improve water quality and reduce flooding? Are we asking too much of them? Do they need any more support?
So if I just do a general introduction and hand over to Cody around how the local nature recovery strategy can help with this. So of course we do have multiple ways in which we work with farmers on flooding. And I think the previous meeting to this heard from the flood risk management team around natural flood management and the work that we're doing with farmers and other landowners around the small scale works that can be done to reduce the level of flood peaks and to spread out, to slow the flow effectively, to spread those out. LNRS, it's very much a similar approach, and there's absolutely liaison between the two teams to be sure that this work joins up. But I'll just hand over to Cody to add the detail there as needed.
Thank you. Yes, to confirm, that is a set of priorities that were shortlisted through the consultation, including local nature recovery strategy around the water environment and farming and the way that land is managed by farmers in a way that can avoid impacting yields but still help with nature's recovery. So, for example, there are some measures set out and spatially targeted inside the LNRS for things like wet grassland restoration, which will hold water for longer and release it slower, but still make water available for cropland purposes. Pond creation was another one. We've lost around 60 to 70% of ponds since the Second World War across Worcestershire, and obviously there's a lot of biodiversity that's dependent on those ponds, so the LNRS gives opportunities to target lost ponds, ponds that were already in our landscape and ordnance survey maps, and therefore should be easy to recreate and hold that floodwater for longer and benefit biodiversity, and also targeting for things like natural flood management, where very cheap interventions can help farmers by holding water on the land in a sustainable way. A lot of these actions are financed through schemes such as Sustainable Farming Initiative, agri-environment schemes, and we are still awaiting for information from DEFRA on the details of those, but we are working with colleagues in Natural England and DEFRA to try and make sure there's cohesion between the LNRS and DEFRA's policy to support farmers undertaking those activities.
Thank you. Lewis? Oh, sorry, Emma. 'Cause Lewis does.
Sorry, thank you, Chairman. With your permission, could I just not obviously answer the Vice Chairman's question, but just to remind him that at the last ONS meeting that we actually had flooding, and we did have the Cabinet member here, and I asked him the question if he was going to provide funding to continue with the extensive work that has already happened across Worcestershire for flood alleviation, and his answer was, I will do my best.
Just to elaborate, was that regarding funding for farmers on their land, the specific question you asked?
It was regarding flooding in general and flooding alleviation in general.
Okay, yeah, my question was regarding funding for farmers, but thank you.
That is also on my list of things to chase because I asked for 4 to 6 weeks, but my delay in sending the letter, so I'll give a bit more time. Louis, sorry.
Moving things on a little bit to the duty to consult on tree felling. Obviously, it's really, really welcome that that's now part of a legislation that has to happen, but obviously that is on minor roads rather than trunk roads, A roads and B roads. And it's really, obviously it's good that we've got a statutory requirement for that. It's really a question for the Cabinet member. If we look back in history, I think there's always perhaps been seen as quite a heavy-handed approach from the Highways Authority saying, we're the ones to control, we can do what we like, we can cut down these trees and we don't need to consult with you. There's a lot of people who get really, really upset when you cut their tree down when it's in their road. So I do welcome what I see with this legislation change, but I wonder whether the Cabinet member would go even further and say that they would consult in all significant tree cutting downs with local residents, because people love their trees and people want, it seems natural justice to be able to say to people in their local area, perhaps through the local councillor that there's some work planned to be done, and we're going to need to do this for the following reasons. When people don't understand the reasons why a tree has to be cut down, they get really, really upset. And I think involving the community well before the trees are cut down, it would be fantastic, because normally what happens is some contractor arrives with a chainsaw and that's the first anyone ever sees of it. Thank you.
I will ask to take that one away and understand a bit more of the context. And the reason for that is, as I understand it, that's process as it is today. My experience working with the liaison officers is that there is generally a reluctance to remove any tree unless there is a safety requirement. The caveat of that being if it's to do with a scheme, such as PrEP. And so I'd like to take that away and perhaps understand a bit more of the context behind that, because if we're talking about specific examples, I'd like to say that that isn't the SOP. It's certainly not the experience that I've had. Where there's an incident, if there's a case around safety, then I'm not sure a consultation would be appropriate. But let me go away with that, if you don't mind, please. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think when it's safety, if the member is just made aware of all the information, I think they can then share that. But if it's a tree to be but just on tree consultation, has on the trees that we've consulted on to remove, have we not fouled any of those trees, or we fouled every single tree despite the consultation? I just want to make sure it's not just a tick boxing exercise.
I'll have to take that away and double check. I can't answer that off the top of my head, but I'll find the detail for you.
Okay, thank you, because from my understanding in Bromsgrove, any ones that have gone for tree consultation have all been fouled despite people coming in, and there might be justifiable reasons for that, but it's just that I don't want this to be, oh, this sounds good that we'll consult on stuff, but actually it's just a tick boxing exercise and nothing actually changes on it. But, Anthony?
Thank you. I'd like to go back onto water, please, if I may. Paragraph 18, the draft LNR sets out wider environmental benefits, nature's recovery, improved air, water quality, and then further down, 24 individual habitat or strategic priorities, rivers, streams. I want to be specific on one thing. As a keen angler and someone who's looked at the rivers for over 50 years now and seen the change in them, we get now the evolution of things like these quick wash solutions that come out and do your washing in 30 minutes, but they are absolutely full of surfactants. Now, surfactants, and it's quite openly stated on the bottles, cause long-term damage to aquatic life. Now, we are possibly pouring thousands of these into the sewage system, into the water system every week. Now, even if you filter the water, from what I can see, you don't remove all of them. If they are being discharged by Severn Trent and other water authorities because of sewage discharge during floods, these things are going unlimited into the water system. You've got the urban rivers like the Stour, which is feeding the Severn. How much of the concentrate comes down on that? And the question is, really, are we able to cope with these sort of chemicals going into the river and ever be able to provide clean water again, or is this for life and really there's nothing we can do about it?
Thank you, Councillor. The point you raised was something that we heard through the draft LNRS consultation and the earlier issues and options consultation. It's something that members of the public flagged as what they saw as a key threat to nature's recovery, river health, and the ecological quality of our water courses. I mentioned earlier that the LNRS regulation sets out the legal scope of what the document can and can't do, and we were keen to include in the final document something that helped address these concerns within the legal remit of the strategy. It doesn't create any new systems or processes, any new legal protection, or any site protection, but what we can do is help raise these issues, the importance of these issues, and try and identify solutions that anyone and everyone can contribute towards. As part of developing those, we work with the Environment Agency, who also heard this message and are looking at interventions and monitoring, but that is beyond the responsible authority's ability to control or influence, just to help raise attention to the fact that this is seen as a threat to nature's recovery and the work that the wider environmental partnership are doing to help address this. There are measures, for instance, we've been talking about farmers and the way that marginal land is managed that can help contribute to this. So, for instance, riparian buffer strips along the sides of streams, if they're managed for nature, can help intercept chemicals that are running off from agricultural fields and entering tributaries, watercourses and main river catchments. And the citizen science projects already underway to help monitor the chemical and ecological condition of our watercourses, which the LNRS can help promote and share information about.
Okay, thanks. Specific points on this. Obviously, we're talking about what runs our farmland. It's completely different to what comes out of washing machines. That's the thing. I mean, you can be looking at the one aspect, which is telling the farmers what to do, how to help those. But at the same time, there are millions of households every week and we're allowing this stuff into the system. So we're not stopping that. We're helping the farmers, but when you've got things like this, which clearly states, long-term damage, would allowing it now, would allowing it next week, in a month's time. I mean, how far down the road does it go before it causes irreversible damage? It seems that, something we're just basically closing our eyes to.
Yeah, I agree, Councillor. There is unfortunately a limit to what we can impose through the strategy. There are measures inside the built environment. They don't, as currently worded, address things like chemical runoff from household washing machines. They do look at things like sustainable urban drainage and releasing land that would otherwise be paved over to hold on water for longer and reduce flooding events from the built environment. But we don't look specifically at chemical runoff from washing machines.
Thank you. Any other questions on this? Nope. Okay then, so just get my right bit of paper. Give me a second. So on this item, obviously this panel has been asked to consider and comment on the update on developments relating to the Environment Act 2021 in relation to the natural environment and air quality covering local nature recovery strategy, biodiversity, net gain and air quality. Agree any comments to highlight to the Cabinet member and determine whether any further information or scrutiny on a particular topic is required. As normal, I'll go through a couple and then please shout at me if I've missed anything on something that looks to be determined at the next meeting on the waste part of the Environment Act, if possible, please. A question to the Cabinet member, and please correct me if I've not wrote this down right, but why are we looking to sell off land that we could import by BNG towards, and whether, well, I'll let Emma come in. Sorry, it was your question.
No, thank you. You've done very well with it. Thank you. So it's very much that, but also what are we doing to actually proactively import BNG, because we're saying it's at an early stage, which clearly it shouldn't be. So we've got a BNG officer. So yeah, what are we doing to proactively promote importing BNG and then identifying land that we could actually receive it on, but particularly, yes, to obviously not be selling off that land that we'd be receiving it on.
Thank you. The other things we want the information on the 10 schools that were identified for school streets. I think we're going to take away the bit on the consultation on local walking and cycling and anti-idling stuff. Again, we're going to provide information as soon as possible on the active travel corridor for Councillor Linda Robinson, and then the answer on the tree felling for our consultation. Was there anything else I've missed? Nope. Perfect. Right then, so thank you for that. We're on to the next agenda item. I don't know who needs to stay here or doesn't. If you don't need to stay here, you're more than welcome to leave, unless you enjoy the sound of my voice, which not even my wife does. So. Just lighten the mood up a bit.
Yes, if you please accept my apology. I do have to leave. My daughter has a university graduation, and I will not miss that for the world. Enjoy the rest of the meeting.
Okay, thank you. And if we go on to agenda item number 6, Net Zero Carbon Plan 24-25 update, and I'll pass over to Ruth. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, panel, for the invitation here today. The panel last discussed the Net Zero Carbon Plan in July 2024, which was shortly after it had been adopted by Cabinet, which was in the March of the same year. And at the time, a follow-up report was requested, which is the report before you today. This plan was one of following a series of carbon management plans over a number of years, different titles, but all looking at carbon management for the authority. The plan itself set out the progress that had already been achieved and then the objectives to move that work forward, and was supported by an action log of clear deliverable projects for the Council to achieve. The plan also sets out the profile of carbon emissions, and these have been repeated in the report for you today, just giving an overview of the sources of our carbon emissions as a local authority. This draws on the data that we publish each year in our greenhouse gas emissions report. We have the report for 24-25 is currently just being finalised, so the report with you today includes the data from the previous year, and that's as published on our website. As you'll be able to see, household waste disposal is our greatest source of emissions at over 70%, and all the other individual areas, buildings, etc., street lighting, they contribute less than 10% each, and many of the areas less than 5%. And the report then goes on, as I say, to detail the different areas that we plan to take action. We have detailed sort of a few changes. So since 2020, we had been purchasing renewable backed electricity, both for our corporate sites, our buildings, and also for street lighting. The purchase of that for buildings, corporate buildings, had to be ceased in April 2024 due to a significant increase in the price associated with that. The contract for street lighting is a longer contract, and that still continues. The action log, I've just detailed a few key achievements which I'll highlight to you. So there's been a decrease in greenhouse gas emissions of 15% from our street lighting, and that's due to the upgrade to LEDs across much of our street lighting estate. So that's had, as you see, real impact there, and obviously that's supported revenue budget savings as well as carbon savings. There's also been reductions in the use of residual fuels, although that's a very small percentage, but it's still good to see a very significant reduction in the emissions associated there. And also an emissions reduction with staff mileage as well, partly due to a decrease in the miles being travelled, and also an increase in electric vehicles being used by staff, and that'll been supported by the Council's salary sacrifice scheme, which enables staff to purchase or lease electric vehicles in a very tax efficient manner. There have been some increases in council emissions from a few sources. They're detailed in the report. Emissions from household waste disposal have increased by 4%, and that was associated with an increase in the amount of household waste generated. Looking sort of ahead, obviously the net zero carbon plan was 24 to 25, so we are obviously coming to the end of that. So as a team, we've been looking at sort of what comes next, and it has been agreed with the cabinet member with responsibility for this area that we will have a sustainability and efficiency plan going forward. That proposed plan will include the work that has been captured in the net zero carbon plans to date under a sustainable council pillar within that plan, but it will also have an increased, a broadened range of work represented in there. So we will also look at other work that is done to work on sustainability within the council. That's both with the sustainability team and other areas, particularly with the within the Economy and Infrastructure Directorate. We've won the West Midlands Energy Efficiency Awards as the Council of the Year for the last few years, yet much of that work isn't actually represented within the strategies. and that's included within strategies that form part of our overarching environment improvement plan. So we have a lot going on with sustainable tourism, sustainable economy. We're doing a lot of work with our local partners. The NHS, you may be aware, has very stringent targets to meet on carbon reduction, and it's really important that we work with particularly the Acute Hospitals Trust and the Health and Care Trust locally to support them with their work in this area. And moving to this sustainability and efficiency plan with this broadened remit will allow us to plan this work and for that to be governed. The governance will continue to be with the Sustainability Board as it is at the moment. I think we've got, there's a lot that will continue. Sustainable economy, sustainable communities and sustainable council will be the three pillars as outlined in paragraph 24 for you there. And that new plan is intended to be presented to Cabinet in spring next year. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And before I just quickly open up to questions, can you just clarify the name change for me, please, from it going from net zero carbon plan to removing the word net zero in the future? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So it's to allow us to have that broadened remit. I think it's also recognising that actually a lot of councils and other public bodies are moving away from the term net zero, recognising that might have certain connotations and perhaps be a less popular word to use. So by moving to sustainability and efficiency plan, we remove that while still being able to encompass that work alongside, as I say, the other work of the sustainability team and wider teams within the Directorate and Council.
Louis?
I've got two questions. The first question is, obviously, we're going through local government reorganisation, and we've only got a certain amount of years before we cease to exist and we're going to the new unitary authority. So I've got a question about where we spend money to save money and obviously reduce our carbon emissions. There will often be a payback period. So my question really is, what is the criterion for that decision about whether it is cost effective and if there is a payback period? Because I think that could be quite a source of perhaps political or subjective decision making about what is an acceptable payback period. Some people might say it's 3 years, but I would say probably it could be 15 or 20 years. You wouldn't buy a house expecting a payback within the first 3 years, would you? So if you've got a meaningful infrastructure, what is the payback period that we base those sorts of decisions on when we spend to save?
Thank you. So yes, absolutely recognise, excuse me, a number of the projects that we look to invest in will have payback periods that go beyond local government reorganisation. From my understanding, that isn't a barrier to us. Actually, we are continuing, and the Sustainability Board is continuing to approve spend to save proposals where there is a financial business case in line with our previous agreements around payback periods. So whilst local government reorganisation will mean that some of that payback will be with a new authority, actually those projects can still continue. And I believe that district councils within the county are taking the same approach.
Can I just probe a little bit more on that? I've got an example with Worcester City Council where there was a plan to put solar panels on top of car park. It decided not to go ahead, but because the financial payback on the investment was somewhere between 0.5 and 1%. So that it did cover the costs of all the investment, the finance costs and everything like that. But there was deemed to be not enough, quick enough payback. And yet it was net positive. It was a positive return, even though it was incredibly small. So I just want to probe that a little bit more about what is the percentage which would be allowable, because I think otherwise you're going to get into situations where it becomes on every case someone's got to decide it. I think it might be helpful for someone to say the minimum is 0.5, is it 3%, is it 5%? Because I think it might help later on if that's a policy decision.
Thank you. I believe, but I will take it back and check, that we have used a payback period of 10 years. So rather than looking at kind of percentage return, it's been a 10-year payback on our spend to save proposals, which is the main financial mechanism we've used to finance these kind of projects. But I will take that back and double check for you. Thank you.
Just on that point, do you believe it's possible for us to reach net zero by 2050 if our payback period is at 10 years, or do you believe that needs to be lower or not a payback period at all?
I think there are so many factors with this, particularly in terms of waste disposal, that it would be very hard to put that trajectory down at the moment. But I will pass on. I think Councillor Perks can come in on that. Thank you.
Thank you. I was just going to say, I think that's a bit of a weighted question to put to an officer, and so it is on. Yeah, and so if we can put that to Councillor Cresswell, please.
It's a factual question, which I'm happy to also put to Councillor Cresswell, but on the trajectory, will we hit what the council policy is, which is net zero by 2050, if we have a payback period of 10 years, is a factual question. So whether the answer is yes or no, that's quite a factual question.
It is, but it's also quite expansive, as Ruth was just alluding to. So I think if we put that to Councillor Cresswell to come back to you in writing on.
I'll park that for a second because I don't tend to agree, if I'm being honest, and I will. I'll come back to that a second because I just feel like, yeah, I need the facts in front of me to be able to do something, and the facts would be, yes, it's achievable by 2050 using that formula, or it's not. So it's got to be one or the other. It's either achievable on a 10-year payback, or it's not. So if it's not, then this panel needs to be able to look at it in more depth.
I'm afraid I don't have the answer for you today, but it is something that we can look into whether we can provide. I'm not aware, and forgive me because I've not been in post for very long, but I'm not aware that we have put in place a kind of carbon reduction trajectory in the past. It's not something that I've seen in documents so far, but I will go back and check that with colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. So just to clarify, we obviously have a 2050 net zero target, but we potentially don't have a carbon reduction plan to get to there at the moment.
No, our carbon reduction plans have worked on sort of short periods with the actions that can be taken within those periods.
Okay, before I go on, so currently you couldn't provide the answer, for example, are we on projected to become net zero by 2050? That being impossible to answer.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. Emma?
Chairman, thank you. I think the question that you've raised has then gone on to a bigger question. So I completely agree with Councillor Perks. This is something, obviously the Cabinet member should be here, but because he's not, that absolutely that question in its fullest extent, not just based on a 10-year payback, in its fullest extent, to know what that carbon reduction plan is or isn't, because if it doesn't exist, that very much needs to go to the Cabinet member for environment.
I agree now because I've now got the answers a bit more. I think that you have to have political steer to get to the point, and without all the answers, which I have been provided now that we don't have a carbon reduction plan, that the political steer needs to be given on that. So I don't know what that was, but Louis. So.
Okay, if I can ask my second question. In the report, it says 73% of the carbon emissions are coming from household waste. And when you look at the activity log, there's obviously a number of things looking at that, including things like carbon capture, and obviously trying to reduce demand and so on. But I'm just wondering whether the sort of elephant in the room possibly is anaerobic digestion. As far as I know, we don't have a county-wide plan looking at sites, looking at areas where we could put an anaerobic digester. And since the government is legislating that district councils are going to have to collect food waste, we're going to have a lot more journeys and a lot more lorry journeys and so on, which obviously district council emissions, but still overall the new unitary authority will inherit these problems. It's probably going to take years and years to find the sites to build them. Shouldn't we be working on that now, trying to find the sites?
Yes, so I'm pleased to confirm that we do have a study ongoing at the moment funded by the Midlands Net Zero Hub, looking at the opportunities for AD within the county, anaerobic digestion, and how that relates to, as you say, the new food waste stream that will come on once those food waste collections start. Thank you.
Chris?
Thank you, Chair. I think Louis asked what I was going to ask. That will do me. Thank you.
Have we got any more questions on this? Sorry, bear with me a sec, because I was expecting some more than that. Just double check my notes, bear with me 1 second. No, my questions were answered. So if there's no more questions again, if we look at what the panel is asked to do, and it's consider and comment on the information in the report, agree any comments to highlight to the Cabinet Member, and determine whether any further information or scrutiny on a particular topic is required. Now, I think prompted that I should ask Councillor Cresswell, so I think we'll add that to the questions that we're going to ask about what is the plan to get us to the net zero by 2050, which is the Council's current policy. I think anyone doing any sort of plan would expect to see some targets throughout the year, and it's obviously not just on this administration. It sounds like there was no plan prior, so it's we need to know that plan. So I'll ask that question. I don't believe there was anything else that was needed. Bear with me 1 second.
Just the payback period. Ruth said she thought it was 10 years, but would take it away.
Yeah, and there's that to ask as well. Yep. Thank you. All right then. Thank you very much for your time on that, and we will now move on to agenda item 7, which is performance in 25-26 in-year budget monitoring, and it's Dave. Thanks.
Chair, would it be easier for members as well if I move down to the front, just to stop everybody?
If you want to, yeah, you can.
Thank you, Chair. Managed to disentangle myself from various wires, thanks to Louisa. Thank you. The performance report that starts on page 21 of the pack That goes up to the end of Q2 of the financial year, where we've got updates for annual indicators, monthly and quarterly ones. There's a Power BI version as well. That's available on the our performance page of the County Council website. I know I've said that at previous meetings, but it's updated, and there are also reports there that relate to performance for the economy panel, and also corporate and communities, and audit and governance, risk and performance is there as well. So those can all be viewed by members of the panel and also by obviously members of the public. In terms of, Chair, the report, it's the usual lengthy one, but where there are sort of changes, the performance challenges, the successes and challenges, just on a flagging up a couple of things in there really. The planned highways inspections completed on time, that figure is pretty standard, 98%, maintain that level. Even though there's always going to be instances where potentially for any service there could be vacancies arising or sickness absence, but where there were those cases during part of the year for the team, I think the measures that were put in place to ensure that the planned inspections could continue at the same level, that they certainly have done. There's been no dip in any of the figures there, the monthly percentages. And the street works permit applications, I think it was flagged up at the last report, included reference to the fact that there was a problem where some applications that were being received, they weren't appearing, I think, in the right queue in the management information system. So it was a case of working with the people who provided that, and to make sure that wasn't happening, so that with also making staff aware that they should be looking at a particular point in the system, so that it's led to a major reduction in the number of applications for works that were deemed to have been granted, even though we might in fact have, there might have been reservations raised about them. So that's reduced quite markedly. In many months, actually, it's been very close to zero, so we obviously hope that it would continue to drop now as well. And there's always the usual information, just a little bit about the split between the majority being utilities companies' applications. It's a pretty standard pattern. Just over 80% usually of applications are received are to do with utilities. But a couple of the standing items really, Chair, in terms of that appear on both sides of the equation, successes and challenges, where it's household waste. We'll have an update on that in the next, I would have thought by the next report that comes to the panel. We wait usually until the DEFRA data set is published. It's usually around in the early part of the calendar year. I think it was a little bit later this year. But that provides us with some good comparative data for other county council waste collection authorities, so we don't try and compare from Worcestershire's point of view, like with the sort of waste disposal authorities as opposed to waste collection authorities. And then in terms of the other thing, just to flagging up on the public rights of way and the reports there, kept that one in. It's just a little sort of incremental rise in the number of outstanding reports. That continues to increase. It's not a huge rise, but incrementally it's grown. So if you're looking at the figure at the end of September with the figure for September last year, then there's been an increase of 325 outstanding reports, so just over 6% increase there. So that figure, I think there's a lot of quarters in a row where the figure is about 12 or 13 quarters in a row now where the figure has risen, sometimes only by literally one or two. In terms of the other elements in the report, I won't go through everything in great detail, but there was a query raised at the last panel, and that was about the PEMS by subject. I think that's in the report. It's on page 39 of the printed pack. And that was really about getting a bit more detail on that. So I think from where I've drawn the information from on the highways dashboard, it doesn't look as though we can get the information, but had a meeting with Rachel Benson on this, and I think we may be able to get the detail a little bit differently. So I'll carry on looking at that. I'm particularly aware that there's one very, very broad category in that table where it covers roads, footpaths and cycleways. So that seems such a wide remit for any one category that it could almost be a catch-all. So we'll have a look and see if we can break that down a little bit further, as has been previously requested. And The street lighting information, there's an element there on, it doesn't, just sort of flagging up really what we're seeing, the normal seasonal trend kicking in. That's on page 42 of the pack. And that's really where the September figure will, the calendar month figure there will always be above the August one. This year's no different, because of course we're moving later in the year, the return of the longer, darker nights. Although the percentage increase is greater this year than for a couple of years, it's about 14% the increase, 771,000 kilowatt hours used and 676,000 in August. So it's there's some other years where it's been just about the same level, but that could be, colleagues here may know better than me, but that could be to do with, as well, in a particular area, it being agreed that lights would be kept on a little bit longer, then maybe even more units been put in, but there'll be the general trend, the seasonal trend is in evidence. And also, based on last year, I think that the final figure for the year will be the lowest that we've seen. So the kilowatt hours expended on street lighting, it's on course to be about 9,450,000. The previous lowest, as you can see from the table on that one page, is last year, where it was 9,770,000. So we're still very much on course to see the lowest ever. And in terms of the graphs to do with section 278 and 38, so what we want to try and do there is without going into huge detail about individual schemes, was to try to provide a bit of background. Those are on page. So on page 44 is just a little bit of commentary that says about a couple of schemes, 38s, that took a long time to reach approval, and that has sort of had an impact. The others that have been dealt with this year have reached their approval in about the normal time compared with previous years. But all of those factors could be ones that are outside our control. It might well be that a technical submission doesn't include the right amount of detail for us. We have to request extra information. There may even be lateness in the paying of fees. I think in some instances as well, the process might be put on hold by the developer because for some reason they may well want to change, for example, legal ownership of land development and have separate parcels of land. They might split things up. So there'll be several things that could affect the length of time it takes for an application to reach approval. And then, of course, the next stage beyond that is for it to go to for legal, to then draft up the legal agreement between the developer and the authority. But we'll try and get a bit more context for that. I wouldn't want to go perhaps into specific individual developers or developments, but we can get the general themes about what's impacting on performance. And really, Chair, Ruth mentioned it in her report, the sustainability report. We'll make sure that any update that's published on the website, that would appear in this report, or at least a link to it. Again, anything that can perhaps try and make the report a bit briefer. And that would put that 24/5 report, as Ruth referenced, I think there's many people have cast their eyes over it as proofreaders. I know I was one of them, so I think it will be imminent, the publication of that. And the only other thing I was going to, and it was really a query, Chair, for you, just a brief one. It was on, just with public rights of way and all the data there. We include in that the definitive map modification orders. And I had a conversation with Phil Coulson the other day. I think, was it that you'd requested, there was a list that you've requested on the schemes. It was just, fine, it's okay, it was just picking that up. I think Phil was just raising it with me, and it was just whether it's just a simple list of the schemes and the dates, is it that they're outstanding, or any other context that you needed?
Yeah, it's just thanks for reminding me on that. It's just that I've been provided the list, and some of those were put on the list before I was born. So, you know, I might look old, but I'm not that old, I suppose. But that's why I wanted that data to be provided to this committee, because that can't be right that something's sitting on there for 32 plus years without going somewhere. There's got to be a reason behind that.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to touch on that point. So once something is raised, it can never be removed unless it's put through to completion, and it is prioritised And so, irrespective of when it was entered, if it isn't a priority, then it will continue to stay on that list. There's a conversation to be had on that, but for your awareness, it can never be removed.
I get that, but I think everyone would think 32 years is a long time to be on a list that hasn't. Something's got to happen, otherwise it will never be removed off the list, will it? So.
Again, there's a conversation to be had, but not everything on the list is to the benefit of our residents. Some you would not want to happen.
Anyway, that's a separate discussion for something that's not really. Had you finished, Dave? Or sorry.
Yes, thank you.
Hannah? Sorry.
Thank you. It's back on the public rights of way. Myself and others members here are very concerned about the number of reports that are outstanding. They've been broadly the same for the last 5 years with some slight increments, and that tallied with the new reports that are received each month being higher than what's being actually worked on and resolved. Now, I am aware that it's a very small group of officers at the moment. You've lost some, and there are posts being advertised. So my question is, how is that advertising going? Are you getting applicants? Two, what can we do? And that leads me on to, there are volunteers in the community who are, some of them are trained, they're very well trained volunteers who are struggling to be allowed to do any work. They are very keen to do it. It is free labour, but they cannot do it because they are not getting the support they need with the equipment being delivered to site. So there's that side of it, and then there are other new volunteers who are desperate to get going and help in their local area, but are struggling to get any training done. So there's several questions there, and as we live in rural areas, it's a really hot topic of conversation that is constantly being brought up, and what are we doing as a council to improve the situation, because it's not good.
No, it isn't, Hannah. Appreciate that. So yes, there's two roles vacant. I believe they're in the process of interviewing, but I will just double check on that. Ultimately, all of your questions can come down to the fact that the team, as you've mentioned, is small. It is underfunded. Whilst yes, there are volunteers and they're desperate to do the work, we don't have the resources in place to be able to provide the health and safety requirements for that. It's a chicken and egg scenario, and so the team is underfunded. They're understaffed currently. And until that is rectified, the situation largely won't change. They are working incredibly hard, and I've got nothing but good things to say about that team. However, that doesn't change the facts, and so I understand your frustrations. We're working to better it, but nothing will change in the immediacy.
There's 5 posts I've seen advertised, but it's a statutory duty. We have a legal requirement as a highway authority to keep those public paths open. Same as if a road was blocked, there'll be uproar, and it's exactly the same legislation. So we need to look at that underfunding to somehow move some of the highways budget. I don't know how, I'm just thinking blue skies, because it is a public highway as much as a road is.
So the statutory duty, absolutely, and our statutory duty is to keep them safe, which we are doing. The progress is the progress, but it's exactly the same as any highways or footpath. Where there is an issue around safety, we spoke briefly just about prioritisation, that is at the top of the list. So we'll take it away, but in terms of a statutory obligation, safety is first and paramount.
Linda?
Thank you, Chairman. A two-part question, if I may. Firstly, I'd like to follow on from Hannah. I sit on the Local Access Forum, and the Rights of Way team come along every quarter, I think it is, and give us a very good update on how things are going. But I think it seems counterintuitive to me that we're not training these volunteers. It's not much of a training. It really is very, very basic. And they could prevent situations getting worse and thereby becoming far more expensive and needing, more of our staff to do them. So that I don't understand at all. The other one, which is sort of on the same track, is under the condition of highways and footways as an area of challenge. We're also falling way short on training our parish lensmen. Now, we introduced the parish lensman scheme, wonderful idea, especially for the rural areas, I feel. But one of my large parishes sadly lost their lensman due to suicide, and have got a new gentleman waiting, and he's been waiting now and been on a provisional basis for 4 months. But he can't make the only date that we're giving in January, and no alternative is available. He's already doing the job and doing it very well, and the parish are very pleased. And if this is, I'd be interested from other members, if this is being repeated around the area, again, it's being counterproductive. So, a little confused on those stats. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Regarding the volunteers, I've answered that the best I'm able at the moment, so I'll take that away. The training of the parish lengthsmen, if they've only been given one date, then again, I'll take that away. It's the first I'm hearing.
Sorry, and I always will note this when someone mentions that somebody committed suicide, especially at this time of year, that please, anyone who might be listening or in here, reach out if you feel in that way. But can you clarify something, Carl? In terms of the training, are you looking at some sort of like business case to put together to be able to fund this? Because as it's been said, that if we can get volunteers to be able to do this, and I can't do it everywhere, because when I've had public right-of-way issues previously due to safety concerns, they didn't use volunteers, they used in-house staff. But obviously it's a way of us being able to get rid of some of this backlog with a smaller upfront cost and hopefully be able to use volunteers to do it. So is that something you're working towards?
It absolutely is something that the team are working towards, some of which I'm seeing this afternoon. So again, I'll take it away. I'll come back with specifics, because right now I'm not able to give them. Thanks.
Hannah, did you want to come back in on that point?
I wanted to come back in on the parish lensman just to agree. We've got the same situation in several parishes in my division where they're struggling to get new lensmen trained, because there's been a few changes recently.
As someone who has no parishes in their division, I will defer to others as concerned on that, and maybe we look to take it away and see if there's an issue. But I don't know if Emily wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that if perhaps at the end of this meeting, if we could know which parishes are being referred to, and we'll take it away and get back to members on that one. Perfect,
they're scribbling away. So, Emma? Sorry.
Thank you. Just on the lensman, yes, exactly the same in my division. Fundamentally, obviously, when we don't have the lensman in place, it then costs us more money because we need to get people who are trained lensmen in to do work, which is then costing more money. So, we need to look at that. My next point really is real disappointment, and it is around public rights of way. At the last meeting, I made it very clear to Rachel that I was very disappointed with the communication or lack of it, or inappropriate communication that was being given to parishes around the resource levels for the public rights of way officers. She took that away, but unfortunately, on this report, I'm seeing, with regards to resources, I'm seeing a bit of a copy and paste. We can't just say we're focusing available resources on dealing with safety issues, because at the last meeting we had, I highlighted the fact that we had a very clear safety issue, and that was that the flood gauge could not be accessed because the stairs couldn't be used, they needed to be replaced and what have you. It had been gone on for a really long period of time. I'm pleased to say that they have now been replaced. But my point was the parish were far too patient, and they were having emails say, oh, yes, so-and-so's retiring, and oh, so-and-so's whatever, and they were accepting this, oh, yes, I know you're really busy, but that is a safety issue. If a flood gauge is not working and it can't be accessed to replace it, that is a safety issue. But my issue was that they were having this communication around, oh, so-and-so's retiring, oh, good luck, blah, blah, blah. But why have we got that resource issue? If somebody's retiring, there's a key in the title there, and that is, you know that somebody is going to be retiring, and therefore we can advertise the posts and get the resource in. And from a cost perspective, clearly appreciate Councillor Perch saying that it's underfunded, but if we've got vacant positions, then obviously we're going to have a cost saving in there. So my point really is that it is a point as opposed to a question. I'm disappointed that Rachel promised to take away the feedback that I was giving, but that wasn't, which actually I think, Emily, was to yourself. But that hasn't been taken on board because we've then got a copy and paste exercise. And I think anything with regards to communication, yes, the public rights of way are big things for our parishes, and if they continually have emails and communication to say also this is going on, we need to tell them the exact information. Yes, we're prioritising, which is the right thing to do, but if we're prioritising safety issues, it absolutely needs to be safety issues, and that's coming back to Councillor Robson's perspective, that you know, safety issues, it isn't once somebody has a tree on their head or something, or a village floods because they can't access the flood gauge. So I would just really like to ask for better communication to parishes, better communication to us, and a much clearer picture. And please don't give us a copy and paste from a resource perspective going forward. And can we have some confirmation that there's planning around the resource levels, so that if we know somebody's retiring, please let's advertise the vacancies beforehand. But enough said, my displeasure has been gone through there, I think. And a question which, apologies if I have missed this and haven't looked at the right part for it, but 3 meetings ago, which was confirmed that we were going to have the data to say that the number of planning applications where we are a statutory consultee and when we'd replied and whether we replied within the timeframes. Is it my mistake, or is this not available in here? Because I'm seeing obviously the section 278s and all that sort of thing, but I'm not seeing where we've responded to the planning applications.
That's not in the pack this time, and the reason that that is not in the pack this time is because we have been doing some amendments to how the service is being run. Unfortunately, the Highways Development Management team leader sought alternative employment with another county at the beginning of 2025, so we have been having to use consultants within that service to manage through that service, as a result of which there was a little bit of a dip in recording the data. However, that has now recommenced. And we have now undertaken a successful recruitment, so we should be able to get that to you for the next meeting of the panel.
So are you happy with that second part of the answer before, because obviously I know there was a lot at the beginning you wanted to say, but if we split your questions in 2, is that possible or not? Because you were talking about the second, yeah.
Sorry, I'd forgotten the public rights away, because that was that was a statement and a bit of a moan. But going back to, so to be honest with you, Emily, I find that completely unacceptable. We've asked for that data, so just because that data is not what we want it to be, we can't then just say we're reviewing the way the data is displayed, and so we haven't put it in the pack. This is an absolutely critical time where we've got these obscene government housing numbers, and it is the most critical time for us to have timely responses from highways to planning applications, because there's planning applications that are going through because they haven't had the responses from highways, and then there's all sorts of messes that they're getting into because it hasn't got the correct highways things, they're going to the inspector, etc., etc. So this isn't acceptable. We've asked for this data and it was being provided, so you can't just suddenly decide that because it doesn't look the way that you want it to look, we don't display the data. And yes, okay, if we have to use consultants, because I'm a bit worried that we relied upon one person to do this, but who then left at the beginning of the year. But if we're relying on consultants, well, that's fine, but we still need to. If we're statutory consultees, we must get the responses to these planning applications. So this is really concerning me.
So just to come in and to give you a second, but just to come in, I'll take a little bit of responsibility as well as chair. You know, I've looked at this agenda and I haven't picked that up, and that's something that you've requested And as chair, I feel like, so I'll take a bit more, responsibility. And I think in general, if there is something that is missing from a report, if it could come forward, but it would be nice if there was ever going to be a reason for the data not being in there, that we are notified before the meeting in both ways, that if we think there's something missing, that we notify, but also if there's going to be a reason that we can come to the answer, so we can say, well, actually, we might want that data anyway, even if it's not perfect. Yeah,
and Chairman, thank you for trying to take the blame, but I don't think there's any need to, because I don't think it's the fact that the report isn't here. From what Emily has just said, is that there's actually a gap in the data. So we're not actually going to get that data, even if the report was presented to us. But also, if the data was going to be reported differently, I mean, obviously this is, it's a very simple dashboard that needs to be done. How many applications were we statutory consultee for? How many did we reply to? And in the time frame or not? So it's probably the simplest of data that we need to provide. But I would disagree with you to say that it's nice to have, because this is absolutely critical, which is why I asked for this to be a report that came on the dashboard and came before this panel.
Carl or Emily?
I think if I just respond, and then Carl will come in as well. So in terms of the data, it was just simply an omission that it wasn't collected, and we are now back to collecting that. We are refining it slightly, but we are collecting the data. However, there has not been any drop-off in performance, and we have not had any comments to us as a Highways Development Management Service around districts having concerns. If there were concerns about specific applications, then obviously please raise those with me directly. But we are collecting the data, and it will be available for the next meeting. It was just simply an omission that it wasn't collected for a little while because of the change in staff. Not sinister in any way, put it that way.
Chairman, sorry, just before Councillor Perk speaks, Emily, if it was an omission to not collect the data, how can you say that there wasn't any drop-off in the response rates? And just before you answer that, when you say we haven't had any comments back from local planning authorities, that's because they already think it's in a bad situation as it stands. And that's why I asked for this data when I became a county councillor, is because highways do not respond in the timeframes as a statutory consultee for planning applications, and that's just taken as read. So you won't have received any comments to say that it's unacceptable, because it's taken as read that it is unacceptable. So yeah, I'm just really, really concerned, and how you can say that the performance hasn't dropped off when you haven't collected the data, I would be interested to know.
Just on that point, can we clarify whether say it's an omission? Was that found out prior to us asking for the data? Did we know prior to Councillor Kersey asking for this data to come to scrutiny that we weren't collecting the data while we were through consultant? And the second point, how do we know whether there's been a drop-off without the data to back it up?
So in terms of the comment, unfortunately, and I don't quite know why, I wasn't aware that was being chased down by this panel, so I apologise for that. So the answer from me would be, it isn't because of the panel. We became aware of it, and we have taken steps to address that ourselves. So we are now collecting that again. The reason I say I don't think there's been a drop-off is because I'm not seeing an increase in the number of chases that are coming through the system. Admittedly, that is something of a snapshot, but it's generally a pretty good indication to myself that we're not behind the curve from where we normally are. But I do appreciate that's a snapshot.
Just before Carl, is there a chance you could write to the local districts to find out if there is an issue? Because but just in general, if if we're getting councillors say that there is an issue here, one of the quickest ways to find out is if we write to the local councils, all 6 of them, and find out if they have had any concerns, because I say they might just, as has been said, they might be just not reporting it and not bringing it up because they think it's as read that that's an issue at the moment, or it might not be, and you're right that there is no issue, but I think just writing to them would probably get an answer.
Chairman, can I help? I'm the portfolio holder for planning and infrastructure for Wychavon, and I can tell you that there is a problem. There has been continually, and that's why when I started as a county councillor on this panel, I asked for this data to be collected, and it was agreed that it would be collected. We then haven't had a meeting where it was collected, so that's why I don't know why now it hasn't been collected. It's not about whether it's been brought forward to this panel. We requested it as a new report, and the reason why I requested it is because I know there's a problem, and I speak from an informed position that there is a problem. So it's not that it wasn't available before, you know, it wasn't being reported. We asked for it to be reported, it was, and then now it isn't.
As a mere backbencher on district, I will cede to your expertise on that, but I'll pass over to Carl.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor. I do actually like listening to you and the way that you ask your questions. It's led with a confidence that whilst I'm going to take it as being subjective until the facts are presented, you do ask really good questions. I think I would like to know the examples so that I can work specifically with the team. Then we can...
I would even be as bold to say that we're in the high 90s, to say that when the responses haven't been responded within the time frame. If not, I wouldn't go on tape live to say that it's 100%, but I would certainly be confident with my house being put on it that it's over 90, which is why it's a known problem. It doesn't get raised because people just accept that it's really bad performance, and which is why I asked for the report, which we got, but then now we haven't.
Okay, so I think we accept that there's an omission on this pack. I, however, would like to invite you to a session so that I can understand it. And then, because I must admit, if I was putting my house on, I'd want to be 100, but I'll take your 90. I just want to go back to the PROW resources and the better comms. I think, unfortunately, as in life, we've all got short memories when it comes to things that we don't want to recall. The issues that we have now with the size of the list and the numbers are not as a result of this administration, nor indeed the last, but iterations of. And so it has been underfunded, unfortunately, since COVID. We are trying to address that now within the constraints that we find ourselves. I don't mean to take away from any of the concerns that you have raised. The training, as I've mentioned, I'll understand what's going on there and come back. But I just want to re-stress to everyone in the room that this is not a new issue. Post-COVID, the team has been underfunded and they have had their numbers lessened. There is something to be said around redundancies and planning for the future. I think we've got that in hand now. It's about where we are and how we move forwards and not constantly looking back, because I think we've fallen into a bit of a pattern of trying to beat each other with sticks over the past as opposed to what we're going to do to go forwards. And that said holistically, not within here. So yeah, PROW, we're working on it. It is improving its legacy, unfortunately. As far as the report, that is something that I feel is pretty easy to achieve, or at least timely to achieve. But I would like to understand some specific examples, and if there's hundreds of them, then so be it. And that's an open invitation to any of the districts that may be listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Chris.
Thank you, Chair. My apologies, as we're sitting down a line of councillors here with rural parishes, so I'm going to just dig a little bit more. It should be a fairly straightforward one on the PROW one. Just on the thing here, it says the bulk of outstanding reports are of low priority, such as missing signs and waymarking. I was wondering, do we have any more quantitative data on that? So what there doesn't seem to be here is the trend in terms of what you would describe as high priority reports. And I mean, could also ask what the definition of high priority and low priority is. And I say, is there data on what the trend in terms of numbers of high priority reports, is that increasing? Do you have data on it? Thank you. Oh, sorry, I did have another question. Should I come back in, or should I let them answer this one and come back?
If it's not about public right-of-ways...
It's a completely different subject.
Yeah.
Chair, I have to go away and find out what those definitions would be, and I'm sure we can get, because we got obviously the total information in there around the different categories within the number that are received, the number that are outstanding. So yeah, we can take away and have a word with the team to see what that delineation is in terms of what they would say this is the category for high priority, whatever, and then if we've got the information about how much is within each of those categories, how many cases there are.
Yeah, thank you. Happy with that?
Okay, yeah, thank you. No, I mean, if we can get the data back on that. Okay, my second question, which I say I don't know if this is without the remit of this, whether this is completely outside it. Duration of roadworks. I mean, I've got particular issues in my area. I say this is another thing you get with rural areas. I've just got a roadworks which has been on for 4 weeks on effectively a major road to one of my villages, and according to the schedule that finished on Friday, there's another 3-day roadworks on shutting the same bit of road this week. It's not the only thing I've had. I've had reports of maybe a 5-day roadworks where parish councillor has come to me and sort of said, okay, I do what the sort of work they're doing. I could have done this in a day. Why is it taking so long? So I'm kind of making a point here, but also asking a question and say, do we have any reporting of duration of these sort of road repairs? Is there monitoring of it? Is there is it something we can do I mean, I think there's certainly concerns in my parishes that these roadworks are lasting for very long periods of time. And I say the one that's just finished, I mean, it's been a big issue with my villagers, this last one. Thank you.
Is it worth taking away the reporting? Yeah. So we'll take the actual report away. I don't believe that there's one that exists right now in terms of duration. What I would say, though, is that it is, all of the roadworks are reviewed, and whilst on a subjective basis I understand comments that are made around I could do this faster, I could do it cheaper, unfortunately that's not always the case when the facts are known. So again, I like facts and I'm less bothered with conjecture. If there are specific ones that you would want a question raised on, then I'm more than happy to go away with that. Nobody is doing work for the sake of making work. There's enough going on in the county that we need to be progressing in a way that's safe and speedy. So yeah, if there are examples, I would like them. It's very easy for people to say I could do that quicker when things are uncovered that aren't necessarily known or aware of. Then there's always complications.
Happy?
Yeah, thank you, Carl. I mean, I do. I mean, I have a lot of details in an email from my parish councillor on this one. I mentioned about sort of 5 days. I mean, it's the... I mean, this is a bit of sort of like third or fourth hand information, but it was like, the comment was like, okay, they've agreed it's going to take this long and they spend that long doing it when it could be done quicker. So I completely appreciate that. I don't know all the facts, we don't know all the facts, but it's clearly an issue of concern, the duration of these things. But thank you for your, I will talk to you about this, I think.
Just on that that point, and I won't go down roadworks properly in my division because I'm getting big daggers over there. I think there is a little bit of a perception, specifically from me, that that some of the roadworks that are being put in place are given like 5, 10 or days or the weekend will do, and it'll be done in 1 day or 5 days, and then the traffic management continues to be there because that's a separate company that has to come and collect it. Is there anything that might, again, looking at facts, that might give a reason for that? Or is it, are we fining people for being 6 days instead of 5? And if that's the case, is that the reason why someone might say it takes 7 days? And if that's the case, are we cracking down on it to make sure that they're doing it in a timely manner?
You're exactly right, Chair. There is a perception that this happens. Unfortunately, sometimes it is the case, and there is a scheme that we will be bringing in, which the name eludes me, but we'll be charging for lane usage. And so if utilities or developers go over their allotted time, then there will be a penalty in place. Just to address some of the perception, if you take a real simple thing like a prolonged pothole or resurfacing, there can be the misconception that the work has stopped, they've been off-site for a day, but traffic management's still in place. That's because depending on the time of year, the road needs to set, and if when the workers came off, we remove that traffic management, effectively we'd be damaging that road and we'd undo whatever the purpose of that was. That's just a slight example. Another is where the workings are underground or beneath site level. People can't see them working, but they absolutely are. So I'm not taking away that there is a perception. Sometimes it's valid, and that's why we're introducing this lane rental scheme.
Okay, I won't go down the rabbit hole of lane rental scheme because we might be here for a while. Louis, is your question just on the data in general, or you've got...
One small question.
Because
one general data.
we'll bring that data on to the end. If you want to do your small question now.
On page 28 of the report, we've got Worcestershire greenhouse gas emissions. I think it's got quite a misleading axis on the right-hand side because the axis doesn't go down to 0. It makes it look as if we've achieved it now. We've got down to bottom. It would be probably less misleading if it was a 0 scale rather than down to 3.5.
Not a problem. Can certainly do that. No trouble at all. Yeah, and it's a well-timed one, check, because even if it's included as a link, as I said, the update of the report that Ruth referenced, I can change that for the how it's portrayed in the report here. So that's fine.
Thank you, Linda.
Just going back one step, if I may, you're talking about delays after the work has finished and the closures and things. I had it the opposite way this weekend, and we were talking about the main A422, where a few weeks ago somebody went through the bridge yet again and demolished it. I had notice from Highways that they would have to do a road closure while they put scaffolding up to make it safe for workers to work on the bridge. Fine. But then they chose to do it on Friday night when nobody knew, so Saturday morning, and the detours weren't marked, they weren't signed, nothing was listed. I didn't know it was going to happen, and it was only when I eventually spoke to out of hours that they managed 6 hours later to get something done about it. But it did cause chaos. It makes us look so inept. And I just wonder if it's just down to lack of communication between the teams. I know they're different people, but they need to speak to each other.
Yeah, and you and your residents have my sympathies. As far as I'm concerned, and I have said this previously, we shouldn't be putting active traffic management out on a Friday if the work's not commencing until the Monday, so I will take that away. It doesn't mean that's because what I want is what will always happen, but we shouldn't be doing things like that, so apologies.
If I could just come back for explanation if you chased it. There was already temporary traffic lights there. That everyone accepted that. It was when it just became a complete road closure for scaffolders that weren't going to be there, at that time. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And just a couple of questions I've got. But the other morning, I left my house and drove off to work. And again, might just be perception, but it was -degrees outside, and I didn't feel like the roads had been gritted, and there was a few cars off in different directions. Has there been a change at all in where we're gritting and what temperature we're gritting, and has that changed at all? So it might just be my bad luck that it wasn't that road.
So I'll chip in there, Chair. No, there's been no significant change. There's been a couple of routes added since last year, but no change to our position, our policy, when we will or when we won't grit. So it may have been, you have to give me the location, but it may have been that we gritted the night before, so we didn't need to grit that particular night. But yeah, we can have a look into that particular one if you want to let me know where that is.
Yeah, I will afterwards. But yeah, thanks. And then just on the bit about communication, one thing that I think this director is have a problem is around communication, which is important because you have loads of staff that be able to talk to each other. And I think the resilience of our staffing to be able to do a lot of this stuff is starting to give me a little bit of concern, specifically for me at a local level, obviously around my highways liaison officer and the continued changes I've had of that since I got first elected in 2021. I could go through the list of how many I've had, but that is starting to give me a problem where I have to continue to go out and re-raise the same issue to people and explain them if it's quite complicated. So I just concerned, obviously, that I know how that decision happened in June, that I got my highways liaison officer replaced with Redditchers. I'm not going to go into that now. You'll be glad to know. But like, what is happening to keep highways liaison officers in post to be able to do the job? Because I'm sick to the back teeth of hearing, well, it won't happen this time, and then 6 months later I lose my highways liaison officer. I have to do it again.
It's unfortunate. I'm not going to detract from that. We have gone out with the job spec. We've had at least 10 in by now. It was 10 applicants in last week. We'll be interviewing in January. Unfortunately, it's the case for any job that you hire on the basis that you think you've brought the right person in. You don't know whether, until you've gone through a period of time, whether it's the right fit either way. Bromsgrove has seen its few go through. Bromsgrove is also the most prevalent in the number of cases that gets raised and has the highest significant put through in terms of projects at the moment, of which you're more than aware of. It's absolutely the case that we're looking to bring in the next liaison officer and that they stick. No one would want anything else. We need consistency, and that's true across the piece. With regards to comments about other areas of comms, yeah, that's noted and we've taken it away. But specifically with regards to the liaison officer, no one wants to hire and then have to do it again. I hope that this will be permanent.
Thank you. Could I just ask what lessons have been learnt then? Because as I say, it's not 1, 2, 3, it's probably about 6 or 7 highways liaison officers I've gone through since 2021, and I'm starting to take it personal.
Maybe that's the lesson.
Okay, I'll park that one. Is there any other questions on this part of the agenda apart from, yeah, so Louis, do you want to?
Okay. I'm obviously a new councillor. I only got elected in May, and sometimes when you're a new person, you have perhaps a different insight to perhaps people who've been councillors for a long period of time. But when I look at the report and the number of tables and the amount of information, there does seem to be quite a lot of detail there. And some people love to pour through loads of tables and detail and stuff like that. Other people like to see it a bit more summarised, a bit more executive summary and so on, and just have a bit more sort of rag rating and a bit more highlighting of what is the issues and what aren't the issues. So this is really a general point, really, that I'm guessing that there were a lot of new councillors elected in May, and not every councillor will have seen these reports before or have intimate knowledge of them. And I'm also quite aware that often organisations that start off with one report and then someone says, can you do this? And then you add, and then you add and add and add. Over a period of years, things get added on, and sometimes they don't get taken away. So what I'm wondering about is whether there should be some work done between maybe the Cabinet Officer, the chairs of the committee, and maybe one or two other people with officers to actually look at what reports we actually want to see, because we might not necessarily having value-adding reports that might cost quite a lot of money to produce, and it might be better to look again at maybe what should and shouldn't be in the report. I don't know, it's just an open question.
Dave, but yeah, I'm happy to work with you, just to say that, start with. So.
Thank you, Chair. It's brilliant, because you're absolutely right. This is reports has grown over the years, and various elements of it have come in from previous panel requests, the previous panel chairs, and it hasn't been reviewed. I remember we sat down with the previous chair, and it was good because we understood exactly what was needed, and then suddenly more detail was added in, and it stays. And you're right, it needs to be reviewed, all of these reports. So very happy to work with you, Chair, and indeed, across the board, because what we can do is review it and if necessary pare it down so that, for example, it might well be that there's elements in here which are annually updated, and we say there's no need to include that again, because we'll provide you with the update when we get an annual report. We can reference, courtesy of the Power BI report, if you did want to look at that data, so that wouldn't need to feature in here. And it might well be that it gets then pared down to the indicators that are particularly of reference and relevance to this committee, including, for example, around planning and responses, so that you've got that. But it's a really valid point, and it's exactly what's happened with this report over the years, growed and growed.
But yeah, thank you, and I'm happy to work with you. And then the irony will be that someone will ask for something that was previously on the report, but that will happen, we know that. So, yeah, thank you. So if we go on to the finance, and that'll be Steph, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good
Chairman,
afternoon.
sorry, Steph. Just before we go on to that, are we happy with what's been taken away from what we've discussed on the previous part of the report? So from my perspective, I would like the missing data for, which obviously can be found without the consultees, for the planning applications to be supplied, so that we've got a whole piece of data there, please.
Yes, and that is something that will be taken away, but thank you for the reminder, because it's sometimes needed with my brain with a 1-year-old. But Steph, sorry.
No worries. I am minded of time, and people have been sitting in the room for a long time this morning with a lot of detailed information. So I won't go through the slides line by line, but I can start mine on page 64 of your pack, slide number 2, which will give you the information relating to the council's overall corporate position. And then the pack continues with the information relevant to the whole of the Economy and Infrastructure Directorate. Same information as reported to the Environment and Economy scrutinies, because of course they cross all areas. And I will remind panel members that the information for completeness on home to school transport is included in here. However, any questions relating to home to school transport should be fed up into the children's scrutiny, whose remit is to deal with any issues on there. So, without further ado, I will kick off. The current financial position as reported to Cabinet recently, the 20th of December, is Q2, which is the end of September, so a couple of months out of date, but as you can imagine, it takes a while to get information through to panels. And it is continuing to show the required use of reserves and the use of exceptional financial support in this financial year. The scale of the financial challenge is considerable, and it's continuing to be considerable. The overspend in adults and children is continuing. We are helping to mitigate that from a corporate perspective by a reduction in the use or the forecasted use of the contingency and increased income from lending decisions, generating some income from investment income, and also the delay in some of the delivery of the capital programmes means we don't have to borrow as quickly as we expected. That is obviously temporary. So once we do expend the money, the borrowing will continue. It's like delaying buying a new house for 12 months. You've eventually got to pay the mortgage back. We are continuing as an organisation to look at mitigation strategies for the current financial position, and the detail of each directorate you can see on slide number 4. We had a £12.5 million saving target to deliver as a council, and we're about 88% on track to deliver that this financial year. Any areas that are not delivered in this financial year will also obviously create a problem for next financial year, because once they're built into the budget, they're built into the budget forever and a day. Previous panels have asked for information on reserves, so again I've included that from a corporate perspective, and we've done a very detailed review of reserves over the last couple of months, and I've gone back to every assistant director and director who's got a name against one of the uses of reserves, and I've asked for a plan. Those without a detailed plan, i.e. no commitments against them or partial commitments against them, we've had a review of them, and Cabinet have decided to centralise those reserves to enable us to demonstrate more financial resilience through the risk review. That total just under £6.5 million, and that transaction has been put through. So what that's had the benefit of doing is increasing our risk reserves from 13 million to 19 million. It's still not very much, but it's better than it was. Q2 high needs, again, not wanting to wax lyrical about this, it's a conversation that's been had both at Cabinet, full council, and at the children's panel. The high needs overspend does continue to rise, and it's now broadly double the budget that we've been given from central government for this. The impact on the revenue account is that we have to borrow for it. So we've got money going out the council, we haven't got any money coming in for, so it's not fully funded. So often we have to borrow money for cash flow purposes. So it is now having an impact on our ability to borrow and fund that borrowing through the revenue account. Briefly on capital, the value reported to Cabinet last couple of weeks ago is just under £500 million, and the 25-26 programme is 159 million, and we spent just under 40 million at the end of Q2. 57% of this is funded externally, with 43% funded by borrowing interest mortgages, and some local authorities, as we do, allows our council to fund capital from revenue. So if you've got a bit of an underspend in your revenue account or particular priorities that you wish to fund from revenue, you can use revenue to fund capital. You can't use capital to fund revenue. So that's all I really wanted to say about the corporate position, but as always, I'm going to quickly go into E&I, and then I'll take any questions the panel might have. So E&I as a directorate and as an area that's been considered by this panel is all underspending. So it's a positive position. We're looking at ways of helping the corporate position out, and the director is continuing to look at ways of helping to mitigate the overspend of the council as a whole by looking at things within E&I that are non-statutory. Obviously, what we won't do is stop doing things of a statutory nature, or indeed stop doing things of a health and safety nature. That's absolutely essential. But if there's any discretionary or non-statutory areas that we can row back on to help the corporate position, that is obviously what we're doing. A couple of the areas of benefit that have been generated without, let's say, too much intervention is the road lightings. You'll know we've been replacing street columns and the old-fashioned street lighting columns over the last 3 to 5 years. The impact of that is we're now using more energy-efficient LED bulbs, which links back to the carbon reduction conversation we've had this morning. And not only is it having an impact on reducing carbon, it's also having an impact on reducing the cost of the energy that we're paying for. So road lighting is underspending and continues to underspend. We're also having a reduction in our waste management expenditure, and that's, I suppose, a little bit of a balancing act, really. The more tonnages you dispose of, the cheaper per tonne it becomes, so it's kind of a volume discount. So we're getting more disposed, but the cost per tonne of that disposal is a little cheaper. So we have forecast an underspend on our waste management, plus we are getting additional income from trade waste. Home to school transport, again, as I've mentioned, this is mainly dealt with by the children's panel, but a positive position in the fact there is, although the numbers of children with EHCPs are increasing, are continuing to increase, the team have spent a lot of time reviewing routes, reviewing contracts and looking at the most best value delivery of these children to their schools of choice. And we are looking at an underspend this financial year on our home to school transport. However, we did put 10 million into the budget. So it's not that the growth and demand is anything less than it was. It's just not as, we are working more economically and efficiently to deliver the demand that was required and continues to be required. And just a little slide there on the E&I capital position. We've got a £94 million programme within E&I areas, and we've spent about a third of it at Q2. So we're not far off. We do tend to catch itself up during the fourth quarter. Again, a significant amount of that funded by external sources, mainly government grants, particularly for the A38. So I'll leave it there, Chairman, but I'm more than happy to take questions as the panel sees fit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have we got any questions? I do, then. Just a couple of ones. So you talk about waste, and obviously that's now given us a saving, but at what point do we creep over to it actually costing us? Are we close to that? Because obviously the less we cost to a tonnage because we got over the limit, at what point does it reverse and cost us more money because we're getting rid of more waste?
I can't give you the answer to that because I don't have it off the top of my head, but there's steps within the contract. So I will get back to you on that because I don't have that answer today. But what I do know is lower tonnage costs us more per tonne. So the more steps us up. But I will get back to you with a formal answer on that.
Okay, thank you. And there's no one else. It's just gonna be me and you talking, I think, for a little bit. You talk about that in the budget it's built into the savings that we don't use some of the capital programme. Can you just clarify that a little bit more in terms of, obviously we won't be using revenue from borrowing, but who's making those decisions?
Sorry, I may not have made it clear. When we look at the capital programme as a whole, it's split on forecast when you're going to spend the money over the financial years. So what I'm saying is it's not that we're not spending it, we're just not spending it as quickly as we thought we would when we set the programme. So for example, you might have a £10 million scheme that is forecast to be spent £2.5 million a year for 4 years. So we would split that programme, 2.5 million spend each year for 4 years. We then think we're going to have to borrow 2.5 million in year one. If the scheme's delayed for any reason, and the project manager says, right, the profile's been delayed, we're not going to start it this year for whatever reason. It could be environmental factors, them finding glowworms or bats or whatever the protected species is that we have to delay. So it might be that that scheme is delayed 6-12 months whilst they deal with the ecology. What that then means is we're still going to be spending 10 million, but we won't be spending 2.5 million this year. So it's all pushed back. So the saving becomes an in-year saving because we don't have to borrow 2.5 million this year, but it's not a saving overall because it's just pushed back. The 10 million is pushed back. That's what I meant. What I didn't mean was we'd made savings as in total reductions, just delays.
Yeah, so thank you for that. But if you had something in its first year now and we have a lot of money that we need to save, if someone said, oh, you know what, that's got to be delayed till next year, then the budget changes and it comes out of the capital, then it would be saved. So what guarantees has been put in place that, because we didn't spend the capital programme last financial year either, did we? So I don't know if it's just a common occurrence that this is the sort of stuff we would do, but I just want to be assured that if a council's voting to keep a capital programme or add to a capital programme or remove a capital programme, that's something that we're doing and it's not something that we're trying to make a saving for by not doing it in the year.
Any decision on capital is a full council decision. So to vary the capital programme, to reduce it, to increase it, is a full council decision. So stopping a scheme could not happen financially without a full council decision. Delaying things through a time issue, so we can't go and dig on that piece of land because there's a protected species. What we would do is within the resources report that's taken broadly every quarter, there would be a discussion of all of the things that have been delayed and why they've been delayed, if it's key. And full council would be requested to approve the revised capital programme based on the revised timings. So if you were to have a quick look at the November Cabinet report, you'll see there's a list in there of the schemes that were in the programme at the beginning of this year that were thought to be spent in this financial year, and the managers reprofiling into future financial years. There's a list of them. So there's nothing that happens to the capital programme, increases, decreases, rephasings, that doesn't go through to full council for approval.
Okay, but I still have a little worry that you would push that over. So if you have loads of delays in it, we'll have a resource problem in terms of being able to do all of those if we have delays in them. And then you move it over into a new financial year because we say we haven't got the resource to do it because it's been delayed. And then it comes into a budget and that's full council's then decision, but it's overarching to a massive budget decision instead of what happened last month when we all sat in here for 8 hours, was it? Where we talked about just specifically on those capital. So I do have a worry that could happen, that you could say, well, we need to save this money. So you sit there and say it's a resource issue because that is a genuine reason that could happen because you've got so many. Push it into the new financial year and make the decision there because then you've made the in-year saving now. And I still think that's a concern that I would have following your answer, sorry. Most
of the discussions on that you were talking about, which I'm aware of, I was watching, were for 26-27 spend, not 25-26. So there will still be in the 26-27 programme, unless the project manager has looked at the scheme and said, it won't be possible to deliver in 26-27 for whatever reason, and they will reprofile them. That's normal activity for any capital programme in any year. What I'm trying to do with project managers really is it became a historic thing that people thought if it wasn't in the capital programme for the year that we're in, they were going to lose it. So it became a use it or lose it scenario. Put it in the programme or I'm going to lose it. I've spent the last 18 months with some managers retraining them that the capital programme is important to phase so we don't borrow money that we don't need to be spending. But equally, it will be rephased. Just because you don't spend it this year doesn't mean you're not going to be given it the following year and the following year. So reprofiling of the capital programme is absolutely normal and it's what every local authority does. But I completely take your point. If everything's pushed back, do we have the capacity to do it all in 1 year? And that would be up to the project managers then to assess based on the risk of not having the contractors available, etc. But it's a normal practice to review the capital programme, and the savings are only made one-off, because eventually it will be spent, unless full council makes a decision not to.
I have one final question, because everyone looks like they're ready to go, I think. Just we say that we're looking at not spending money where it's not statutory in the directorate. Is there a list of things that we were going to spend at the budget, but now are not? Because obviously, when we go into those budgets, a load of grand claims are made about how this is going to spend on X and this is going to be spent on Y. But if we're looking to save a load of money to fund other directorate, have we got a list of those things that we're now not doing? And again, who would make those decisions? Thank you.
Most of the things that I'm talking about today that Ian and I are delivering is it's not a decision to stop doing something. What it is, it's the delivery of something is more efficient, more economic, it's generating more income, or we're doing it quicker. So I can't tell you that we've sat in a room and said, right, we're not doing this particular task anymore. And I know full well the cabinet member would not allow us to do that, because decisions on what we provide is a decision set by cabinet and full council as part of setting the budget. So officers don't have the permission to stop doing something. What we can do is look at a way of doing it more efficiently and more effectively and generate more income. So the majority of E&I's underspends, as you'll see in slide 12, is the first line is we weren't paying a director for a period of time. The second one, major projects, it's 22,000. We've managed to get some efficiencies in our contracting. Passenger transport operations, we've got additional income coming in from selling our services to other local authorities. Most of these, if not all of them, are the ways of delivering things more economically, effectively, and with more income. But officers don't have the power to stop delivering services. That's ultimately a decision for either cabinet if it's in their gift, or full council if indeed it is part of the setting the budget.
Thank you. Has anyone got any questions now? I've rabbited on for a bit. No? Okay then. Well, thank you very much for that. And I think that's it. So now we don't have a work programme at the end. Thank you very much for attending, and I won't see you all probably, so have a good Christmas. Thank you.